food and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. Right along here with Ransom Godwin, taking you through the solution session. Everybody's been talking about the problem, so I thought tonight, we can talk a little bit about the solutions. The world continues to spin completely off kilter to the point where now it's wobbling. If you've ever watched those images or movies of a windmill that's cavitating in high wind and you see it off balance and you know the thing's going to spin and eventually break, well, we're at that cavitation point where it's not smooth any longer. But that's the problem. So what's the solution as society shifts, this forced shift upon us? Well, we're going to talk about a few different solutions tonight. And I wanted to start off with, I've been listening to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk's new content. He just put this book out, like Day Trading Attention. And he's talking a lot about AI in this thing and how moving forward. And I like this statement. He was like, remember if anybody who's older out there, if you're over 40, remember how we used to talk about the internet and be like, the internet's going to be the thing, the internet. Nobody today even considers talking about the internet because it's such a bedrock foundation stone of society for communication that you never hear anybody going, hey, the internet, is that thing going to work? Is it, like it was before, you talked about, oh, are you going to get on the internet today? That was a thing, right? He's saying that within 10 years, AI will be the same thing. You won't even consider talking about it like we do today because it'll be such the bedrock foundation stone of integrating into all work. And I have a story as we continue tonight with my friend Chad, graphic designer, and he's facing some problems already with AI. So, how do you integrate this to be your partner in thinking? Let this thing think for you. But again, I know a lot of people will be out there going, no, don't even touch the AI. Well, a lot of people said the same thing about the computer and the internet back in the day. Don't touch it. It's just a fad. It's going away. It's not going to be, it's dangerous. All those people can talk. But as we look through, our food growing and the different floods that have occurred across the planet in this last week and this never-ending uptick in storms and how the media is bending itself around of every, you cough. Oh, it's because of too much CO2. Oh, there was 2 cows in a field. That's too much CO2. And now, I did an interview with Jim Gale earlier, and he was saying that 2 of his chickens on his homestead received a $1,000 fine each because he brought them from South Carolina to Florida and he didn't register his chickens crossing state lines. So again, that's just another blatant removal of our food source. And is your homestead next? We're going to talk about all these things tonight, including homesteading and how you can be able to grow your food. And the raw milk raiding continues across the United States. So 4 or 5 other raw milk cow share farms have been raided this week. I mean, it just continues on and on. You can see how the corralling of our food sources into just a very few hands of corporate control continues. Now, how fast will this ramp up? I don't know. Ransom's got an enormous amount of ideas as we were chatting through the week. So take from this what you will in terms of solutions. Share with friends and family. And please remember, we do put out show notes. You can go to oilseedcrops.org. I'll say that again, oil like 1 barrel of oil, seed like a seed you plant in the ground, crops, plural, like crops that we harvest every year, .org, and go right over there where it says show notes in the top browser tab, oilseedcrops.org. We'll send you out everything we talked about tonight in a bullet point format so you can share that with your friends and family and start the conversation because the world is ready. I mean, everybody's seeing things shift. There's no longer convincing anybody something's wrong. It's now they're ready to have conversations about it, where a couple of years ago they weren't. But it is open season on good conversation to find solutions. And I appreciate you joining me tonight, Ransom. Floor is yours. Oh, if I would add him in, please, technical difficulty. You need to add your co-host in. I was in such a rush to get back because I was out digging part of our duck pond. Again, we didn't have a deep enough, put another drainage catch in it and just ran back in for the show here. Ransom, welcome. I got you back on the line. Here we go. Are you on mute? Ransom, I hear you. I see your microphone's on mute over there. So until you pop in, I will continue with I guess a story of such. There, I see you're off mute.
There we go.
Bingo.
No, I was messing around with the Brighteon. It didn't start broadcasting, so I was trying to fix it. I think I missed a step or something.
Yeah, and let me say something. Yeah, thank you for Mike Adams to invite us to Brighteon TV for this 10 p.m. the midnight slot. You know, Mike's revamped his stations from Brighteon TV, which was the live show format, which I used to have the show on 2 to 3 p.m. Fridays every other Friday. And because of the stifling of social media reach and not being able to share any of the links from Brighteon feeds, he has consolidated and turned the live show function into anybody who was a previous host to go live at any time. So he asked if we would bring our show onto their platform. We're still trying to integrate the stream keys here, and I will reach out and find out what's going on. But Mike, thank you for the invite. And yes, we're trying to get on. So we're going to be streaming on Brighteon TV during this time as well. So it's just more message, more reach, more solutions as we talk with others. So Ransom, back to you.
Sweet. Yeah. I got airheaded and lost. What were you talking about before you brought me in there?
Just trying to figure out what's going on with this crazy world and the solution-based mind frame versus just the problems.
I've been watching, and I can't help it. It's like a made-for-TV soap opera, the presidential race, right? I'm not even really paying attention to one candidate, just the other. And it's like this horrible slow-motion train wreck. So it's like I'm expecting something just really bizarre here before the election, just because the way things are setting up. I'm listening to people. It sounds like it's all central casting, made for TV, and it's I don't know if you saw the last debate, but it's just over and over again. I'm watching this guy that obviously, this is only my opinion because I don't want to get us in trouble for with fact checkers or anything. But in my opinion, it looks like I'm watching a movie about a Manchurian candidate that's like also Weekend at Bernie's, right? It's like a mix of those two movies, and it's like I see this guy that's walking around, his skin's falling off. It's different at different times. And then when he talks, it's not coherent in any way, shape, or form. But yet there's people like seals, around him talking about how smart and sharp. And I'm just wondering, like, am I totally separate in a different reality than all of those people? And then today I, just messing around because I was cleaning up some stuff and I fixed the antenna and all of these channels came in. And, I forgot that there are millions of people. Sorry. There's millions of people that are watching like Jerry Springer and I can't remember the name of the other one. But I sat down and I told my son, I said, remember, there are millions of people watching this on a day-to-day, and this is the input that they get, and they think that most people act like that, and it's a whole dumbed-down world of entertainment to reflect people and keep them that way. And then I'm thinking, my brain's working overtime, and I'm looking at this, and I thought, this is horrible propaganda programming to just turn people into complete degenerate losers. Behavior wise, but you notice they're never talking about anything on there like how to make people's lives better. It's always is someone not the daddy, or are they the daddy, or someone touched me here or there. It's all of that stuff. It's just all degrading, demoralizing television to make people, I don't know, feel better about their situation. But what bothers me is that I just know that people are glued in it. And then you got the internet people, like you said. There's people, all those millions of people that just basically watch television. When they hear somebody say something, they're like, well, where'd you hear that? Oh, I got it off the internet. It's a standing joke for like a decade that if someone uses the word internet as the source of where they got some information, that somehow it's dumb or it's made up or it's a hoax or, the earth is flat or whatever. It's a whole bubble of propaganda weaponization to keep no one talking about the serious topics. Like, what are the serious topics right now? They're
Sasquatch.
yeah, it could be, man. I can't help but go back and associate what's happening now to like let's go. I'm gonna say 100,000 years ago. So I know for a fact 100,000 years ago there's like at least four, but I'm thinking 5, 6, 7, 8 different kinds of human beings competing, and they're all making tools and they're all doing their thing, and somehow just one hybrid species comes out on top. And it's because of revolutionary changes in the behavior and the way of life. And people don't understand that we're at one of those pinnacles now, where there's going to be gene edited everything from the bottom up, created, designed world. And then you got on, the other hand, the technological change that's about to happen. And I talk about it a lot and say, well, I don't think people are ready for it. It's because they can't be ready for it. They're in a daze. And the technological changeover, it happens so slow until now. And it's like the internet and AI are going places that people can't even imagine. And they don't see how it intersects with their life. But you're going to in a very short time. It's going to be like day and night. All of a sudden, you switch over. And I've been finding that with, going through the websites, they're all changing the way that you interact with them, and everything's becoming a more coalesced way of tracking and tracing you, no matter what you're doing. So we're going to have to come up with ways to get around that, because there's lots of things that they're trying to stop people from doing. But number one is they want to micromanage each and every person's the way they live. So they want to not only control what they're thinking, but what they're eating, where they shop, whether or not they get employed or not, all of these things. And people are waking up to that in one way or another, but they think it's a geopolitical argument or a political argument between like right and left. But whenever you look at the overall outcome of all of their programs, you see that they're all going in a unidirection. And that direction is the consolidation of all the powers on Earth into one system. And that system will dictate everything that we do. And we know it's coming true because they're implementing it right in front of your very life. Here's this one out of, I forgot what the name of this one, Reclaim the Net there. London's privacy nightmare facial recognition gets a boost at Tony Blair conference. And what are they doing to boost it? They're going to add ever increasing and better and more precise facial recognition and biometric systems that keep track of everything. Like they're going to know whether or not you carried in a bed bug on the inside of your pant leg when you come into something. And people don't realize, I've seen a lot of people on the internet talking about this ring of satellites that goes around the Earth that's constantly bombarding the Earth with the infrared beam. So it's a real-time spy network of basically the geographical changes and layout of the entire planet. And they have these way out there geostationary satellites beaming this infrared stuff going on, and it's keeping a real-time shape of the weather, of when people move around on the ground, all of that stuff. They don't get it. You're completely track and trace. But what's more than that is they've implemented that same system into your household, and if you're out and remote, that same system is also on your phone. So if you want to just blow your mind right now, set up some surveillance cameras and turn off all the lights so that it kicks in the infrared, intake on the cameras, the infrared function of them all, and then start looking at all your devices. They're beaming out stuff constantly. They're keeping a real-time, three-dimensional story of what's going on in your house, what you have, what you've stored, what you have in your walls, all of it. And yeah, that's pretty mind blowing. So I'm thinking that people are going to have to start realistically thinking about forming new ways of living to counteract the increase in technological privacy intrusion. In other words, you're going to have to create technological solutions along with old school know-how. And there's different ways to do that. But I've been watching around here. They have this. I'm not sure who owns the helicopter, but I know what they're doing. It's a big old X-ray or infrared panel, one of the two, on the bottom of the helicopter, and they're just doing grid patterns. So it's probably some LiDAR or something like that. But all of that information is being updated more and more often to keep it up to date, and then also more and more technologies and or software are having access to that data, and people just don't realize that basically, I mean, we've been reduced to rats in a cage, and it's weird that they have the like I said, the central casting type propaganda on the television about who's going to run stuff. Now, I was watching that French election, and it seemed to me that they had enough of certain situations, but then all of a sudden their election goes left. And I know that's a conspiracy theory to think that, elections in different places, despite U.S. intelligence admitting as much, that can be, manipulated in different ways or outright changed if they're using computer programs that could be, susceptible to intrusion, from cyber attack. And that's where we're going now. Imagine how much money they are about to ask for people to pay for protection of their biometric identity. You've heard of identity theft in the past. Wait until someone can just copy your biometrics, all of your data, and then beam off somehow that information to the devices that are everywhere trying to pick up that signal to identify who you are. And people don't realize that, when you go to Target or Walmart or, any of them, Bells, if you went clothes shopping at one of those, malls, etc., they are ripping information directly from your phone that tracks all of the other places that you go, and without actually invading your privacy, can figure out your identity and therefore know when and where or what you need or are going to buy in the near future. Now, think about how much power that is if the food supply starts shrinking, and you can decide, exactly when and where you could kettle people into buying overpriced food, or absolutely know when the economy is weak enough, where people are weak enough, meaning that they don't have supplies at their home, to crash it, having the most devastation possible. And, that could possibly happen from what they've been trying to brainwash with the predictive programming over the last couple of years, some kind of cyber attack, or B, just straight blame, the economic situation that turns out from all of the world breaking into two parts, the petrodollar and the BRICS nations. And I'm seeing more and more people starting to finally take that serious, that, including, like, I was listening to Ron Paul the other day, and he was talking about, we're finally having to deal with our dictates of foreign policy because all of the littler nations, the less powerful nations, are now banding together and going in the direction of China and Russia and the BRICS. So, there's no telling, or actually, I think it's on purpose, and I think we've already been picked the loser, at least for a decade or so. I don't know what you think. I really think that it's sophisticated enough that they're playing games to decide when and where there are winners and losers, just like, for example, the U.S. government has been doing with different companies over decades now, giving them bailouts, deciding who gets to go broke and who doesn't. And then all the way to what you saw lately with the pandemic, where they literally nudged mom and pops out of business through regulations and local law enforcement deciding who could be open and for what hours. And another thing that's weird to me, have you realized that Walmart and those other places has never gone back to the American 24-hour system? that we had prior to 2020. So in early 2019, anywhere you lived, you could go to Walmart 24 hours a day, get groceries, get parts, get whatever you wanted. And no one has even like raised an eyebrow about how 12 hours of the capitalist, situation got turned off, which means that's 12 hours of less people earning checks. That's 12 hours less of profits being made. That's 12 hours less access for people to get necessities that they may need or not need. I don't know. It seems like just on that alone, you could see they are shutting the system down.
It's 12 hours less security guards you need late at night when flash mobs come in to steal everything. You look at it, it's like, whoa, that was perfect timing. They're going to cut off the overnight shopping hours with a rampant theft occurring across the Western world in general. But cyber attack in the economy, take that into consideration for a moment, because if our banking system shuts down, there would be no available credit. Now, our credit cards would stop working, and that's a no-brainer. The banks would bail in your funds, and that's a second no-brainer. You'd have to get some allocation for probably $20 a day or whatnot. I talked to a friend of mine, Constantine, who was in Cyprus. He's from there. And he was saying that everybody was limited to 40 euro a day to pull out of their bank machines. And if you were a business, you were able to get up to 200 euro a day. And it was very touchy. So and a lesson learned from that, if you're able to have a personal savings account and a LLC or some kind of self-proprietorship, business registered in the bank and an open account, that would give you two streams of being able to pull cash out of the bank during that time. But that aside, without credit, you realize that all of our farming in America stops completely. Everything is purchased in advance using credit. Nobody's buying 5,000 or 50,000 gallons of fuel to run a planting season on 10,000 acres with the applications for the fertilizer and the herbicides. None of that is paid cash. Everything is forward credit on that. So the minute any kind of banking contagion comes in, you might be thinking about, well, myself, I can't get to my funds, my bank's locked up, the ATM doesn't work. Okay. That is a problem, like an immediate problem for you, but your real problem is going to occur when whatever part of the season we're in, that hopefully it wouldn't be in planting season, because nothing's going to get planted. After they run that first bevy of, farm inputs, is gone. There's done. They can't get any more. And that knock that chain down, the farmer themselves won't be able to buy or get on credit what they need to get the crops in the field. But then take it further downstream, where you're starting to look at some of these suppliers that wouldn't be able to either, because everything on our planet in this delivery system runs on credit, all of it. So if you want to take down humanity, you simply need to take down the banking and credit system for a long period of time. Could be 3 months. Anything after that, 30, 60, 90, everybody's out 90 days at the very longest. Some of 180 on special arrangements. But anything on that 30 or 60-day period, if it couldn't be given out for the maintaining of society or the maintaining of purchasing for then production of something that maintains society, our society and civilization come to a grinding halt. Grinding halt. And the very minimalist thing you might want to think about is your water purification. Do you think that these water companies and these, state entities, that they're just buying things by the minute to add in for water purification and of course everybody's got different levels of purification, where it's coming from and how it gets redistributed back out after treatment. But do you think all of those chemical inputs into just simply getting you clean water would be there either? No. Now you're looking at food, now you're looking at water, and then your bank account. Well, yeah, it would be devastating in the beginning. It's a psychological trigger. I can't get my money. Well, for me at that point, I'm going, something nefarious this way comes, because the water's going to be non-drinkable, non-usable, polluted because they can't, and then our food supply is going to shut off. And then the supermarkets, well, that's just a foregone conclusion there that they're not going to have the credit to then forward buy those things they put on the shelves that they pay their suppliers 15 or 30 days after. So you can see how this intertwines here in just like one single strand. If you were to take out the credit system on the planet or in the West, you would devastate without firing a single shot. This would be Tsar Bomba times 10 across a civilization without all the radiation and drop out of the atmosphere and destruction of the buildings. You could literally walk into a place afterward and just take over. Provided you had a functional credit system outside the imploding system, and we're starting to see that firewalling off. And Ransom brought up a great point there. The BRICS nations, as we sit now, not even in the future where there's 30 more countries that will join. I'm just talking about right this second. I'm not forecasting the 30 joining in the future. Right now, they control 40% of all raw materials across the planet, all energy. You put that into perspective, and then 30 new countries are going to be joining them over the next year and, 18 months. At that point, it's going to go well over 50% of everything on the planet will be controlled outside U.S. control or Western nation control or Western nation military control, because these countries are really ramping it up and coming together. And, I was looking at this article earlier. Let me see if I can find it here. Enbridge was popping back up again. This is a Forbes article I was starting to work on for the Adapt 2030 channel. Now, this Bank for International Settlements, this Austin Carstens, he's super excited that the central banks of China, Hong Kong, Thailand, the UAE, and also Iran are coming in to trade and have a specific hub of cross-border payments just for those nations, running on their own system, running their own distributed ledger technology, and it's called Enbridge. And then you look forward and who's going to be coming in later on. You start to look, they're going to be running Ethereum on that, and Saudi Arabia is going to join them. And you just start to see the dominoes are starting to just go in a line across the gymnasium floor. Once we lose control, and we already have, of the banking system and the credit distribution to keep our world running, once that ceases, that your bank getting locked up is the least of your worries, is what I'm trying to say. So what would you do in advance? Because this is the craziest thing. So what do I have? I got a newspaper in my hand. This is the Knoxville News Sentinel. What did they have on the paper this weekend? The storms come, and these are the things you need to prepare for emergencies. Now, wait a second. What is this thing doing in Knoxville, Tennessee? They go through a hurricane kit. Okay. We don't get hurricanes in Knoxville. I don't know why you'd have that. But still, one of the things they have is maps of the area. Copy of your insurance policy. Okay, these are some things that you're going to want to take, any kind of deeds or ownership papers of vehicles or homes, whatnot. And then number 2, food supplies. And then number 3, which Ransom and I talk about ad nauseum here, hardware, tools, screws, tools that can repair tools, machinery that can repair tools, duct tape, these sort of things, canvas, tarps. And they come into a first aid kit. And it's lengthy, it goes from, insect repellent, obviously, citronella candles, petroleum jelly, ointments, sunscreens, and moist towelettes, cotton, and then it comes down to tweezers, and then, some isopropyl rubbing alcohol, latex gloves, etc. But then they got kitchen supplies. When they talk about the hand sanitizers and bottle openers and, matches in a plastic bag. I mean, matches in a plastic bag. Are you kidding me? I would challenge you to go into somebody's house and find matches, except me and Ransom, of course, or any of my friends that are out there that are getting prepared. Matches are a thing of the 1880s past. Very few people have matches. They all got lighters. Matches are kind of a rarity. I would challenge you to find a pack of matches or a matchbook in somebody's home. And then they have a baby section, obviously, for the medications, disposable diapers, etc. But you got to realize if something like this happens, you're not getting any more disposable diapers. You're going to have to figure it out how your grandparents did it, and they used to wash that. And then you're going to need to think about the water to wash that to keep your baby clean, because if you're giving them dirty water after you wash their changeable, foldable nappies, that they're just going to get skin disease. That ain't cool. And then we got water tips. And then they got ice tips too, but I'm looking at that going, well, on a grid down, you're not going to really be getting ice. But surprisingly, all these things spelled out, and this list, is easily 400 items deep. Knoxville News Sentinel, I give them much credit for putting this out to get people prepared for the emergencies. But in the back of my mind, I am questioning why now? Why in our local communities are these things suddenly coming out with such a fervor? It's a full page in a Sunday edition of all these things you need to get ready for. And it's color-coded yellow, it's not just a page, it's a yellow page. So things are starting to tick and move sideways. And, I'll just say one last thing, because you mentioned a decade, all these changes here, Ransom, we're a decade. I'm going to say, no, not a chance. 80 years on a fourth turning is where we sit. So when things go awry or upside down, as some people say, it can alleviate itself in local communities. And yes, it will not be as traumatic as we move forward, but it's sure not going to be a decade. This is an 80-year fourth turning recycling of, and the West being left out. They're going to do their downward spiral at a slow rate or whatever happens, but you're going to watch an enormous amount of money swing over into underdeveloped nations now so they can give them credit and start this whole continuous credit and debt system rebuild where our world can finance itself by issuing debt only to all these what we consider third world nations, and the wealth transfer is going to come from the West to kickstart that. So a decade, in my opinion, is way, way, way too short of a time to be thinking about it. Things will restructure themselves. Don't get me wrong, they will. They'll restructure. Humans don't want to live in squalor. But the decadence we used to enjoy, that I would consider we're going to have to live a little more meager lifestyles, a little more pioneering lifestyles, a little more not as much entertainment lifestyle, not as much travel, for some, of course. But I think there's going to be a downward trend of comforts as we move forward, where in other parts of the world, they are going to be living lavishly on the transference of wealth. So nothing goes to zero. It's like a teeter-totter. It moves. And I really believe the fourth turning is here. We're in the collapse phase. That takes about 20 years itself. And then that transference of wealth where, and in 80 years, it's going to be it'll be a completely different planet. Like, I mean, you should go back to 1940 and you look at our planet now, it's very different. But so many things. And how do you even prepare or even begin to get ready to facilitate everything on this list? If you were to buy just even one of everything on this list, you're talking thousands of dollars here, thousands of dollars. And it doesn't even include things like ham radios and CB radios and walkie-talkies and sort of thing for long distance between, people out in the forest. If you're running around looking for food, you got a range of about 3 miles on those yellow handhelds that you see at a lot of job sites, about 3 miles. But if you're going to get a set of 4 of those and you need ear sets with those, I mean, you're already looking at several $100s. But to get everything ready on this list, people just don't have that kind of money. And 1 is none, literally. 1 is none, because when you're done with it, you're down to 0. 2 is 1. So now you got to double all this. Look in here. It's a great list. Don't get me wrong. Great list. Super important, super helpful, very valuable list. But for most people, that's not doable in a weekend to go get that. That's a lot of ordering online. And, then you talk about it. Amazon's going to track you and trace you. And whoever buys everything off this list through Amazon for sure is going to end up on their own list of, hey, this person bought everything off this list. So where does that leave you for your preps? Again, trying to locate some of these things. Your number one prep, water. Obviously, you're going to need water. Anybody out there, I encourage you, before you buy any of this other stuff, you need to get some water purification, little Sawyer straws, hang up, flow through 1 gallon bags, whatever. You need water first, because one of the things going to go down first is the water fill, the water delivery. And if it is delivered, it might be, not usable. So you're going to have to start thinking about water first, second, third, and then you can think about your food. Then you can think about, medicines as well. But water is your hygiene. Water is your life. You don't have water 3 days, you're dead. 3 weeks on food, you get yourself sick or wearing like super dirty, sewage filled clothes because you couldn't wash them, and you get that on your body. There's no way. You could be the biggest mountain man, strongest on the planet, but if you don't have your hygiene up and you can't clean yourself and keep yourself clean, you're dead. So water filtration and what would be my first one to go to there on that list. But I don't know, man. I'm rambling, so please take it back over.
Water filtration. Well, almost all of the survival techniques there are doesn't mean anything if you don't have water. So no matter who you talk to, whether it's prepping or just straight survival out in the middle of nowhere, you have to have water. I mean, that's essential to every single organism just about on the planet. I've been thinking about the hardest thing that there's going to be, because if we were Pleistocene, man, it wouldn't be hard to go get meat's easy. It's just running around everywhere. There's little chunks of meat and giant chunks of meat and mid-sized chunks of meat, but that's not going to be the case for people now. So if you didn't think about that ahead, I think that's going to be a hardcore thing. So you need to not only look into storing actual meat products as supplies, but also some kind of protein powder. I mean, because think about this: if you're going to be moving anywhere or doing anything, you're going to not be able to take large items with you. But powder is not very heavy, and it goes a long way. So you could have a big, satchel of protein powder, vegetable powder, and vitamins and things to keep you along, at least long enough to stay, healthy. And I think that's what it is. If there's any dramatic event, all you have to do is be able to stay healthy longer than 90% of the people, and then things are going to change. There's going to be a turning. There's going to be a new way of things immediately after that. Now, depending on how that goes, if it just comes back up to positive, I mean, think about the people right now that are in the line of that hurricane, and we talked about it before when it was still, out there in the ocean. That every single time there's people that die, there's people that get lost, there's people that their electricity goes out, and they're just, completely deer in headlights victims in an era where you have real-time data of these storms coming in, right? So you have days, weeks to think about it, right? So we know these things happen, and the majority of the U.S., at least, is in some zone where an emergency can happen. So if we're just not talking about war or the collapse of the dollar, if it's just natural, wouldn't you want to be prepared for that first? And that's a good run through of what you're going to have to deal with if something more serious or global happens. And obviously that water is the number one thing, but I have doubts for people that live in the desert, because there's been tremendous destruction recently just from a few fires and some normal monsoon clouds that rolled through afterwards. Massive flooding. I don't know if you saw it on the news, but Ruidoso, New Mexico, has just been hammered. First they had the fires, and then these storms came in and just blasted them. So everybody in Ruidoso is just, tripping out that for a minute they lived in a lush, really uppity, wealthy town that had a lot of dispensaries, a racetrack, all kinds of stuff, skiing for most of the year because they have a 12,000-foot mountain right there. It's literally the area where the Apache believe the four teachers came off the top of the mountain, and they have lots of stuff themed that. And if you live around here, you just look at it, it's this big electromagnetic magnet that pulls in lightning storms nonstop. I mean, like from where I'm at, I can look at it. Every single lightning storm that goes through there, you see them just bing, bing, bing. It's dropping it. So they should have been more than prepared for any scenario like that living there. And that goes for anybody living anywhere. If you live in Tornado Alley, what are you doing whenever it finally says, hey, this one's coming right to your doorstep? Where are you going? What are you doing? And what are you doing afterwards if everything is turned off? I mean, like, within the first day, if you didn't get some kind of government help, you would have to survive on community help. But if the community's destroyed, they also have trouble. You're going to have to defend, yourself, which means what? Do you have stored stuff somewhere, hopefully in the ground, in some kind of shelter? And almost no one has that now. The last time I went to Arkansas, I knew of about 12 storm cellars that people had on their properties. And just out of curiosity, I was actually looking to see how many were still there, because I was thinking in the future I might, purchase a house that has that. But they had all filled them in and destroyed them. And I just couldn't wrap my head around why you'd want to do that. Some of them had groundwater problems, and I get that if they couldn't, afford to fix it. But most of them were in legit shape, and you could just have your supplies there and just sit in there. Even if your house got ripped from the earth, you could just pop right out, have lunch, and start thinking about how to move forward with your life. So if something happens like the dollar collapse, or at least a great reduction in the amount of things you can buy with that dollar, which is very possible, especially if we go into a world war scenario again. Food's going to obviously go up. Gasoline's going to go up. The governments are going to try to put restrictions on people, telling you when you can go, where you can go, and how we're going to do it. Are you going to line up in a 6 mile long single file line to get a little bit of bread because you didn't think ahead? And as soon as the banks stop participating, you're a SOL, right? I'm not like that. I actually have different contingencies to eat from day to day, and one of those, and the main one, I think, is learn how to live Pleistocene man. I was watching a guy carve a Neanderthal spear that they know that Neanderthal made and was pretty good at, and he recreated it using only Neanderthal tools. So, sharpened rocks and some leather pads and some rough rocks for sanding and different stuff. And he came out with this really elegant javelin type weapon, and he demonstrated it was very easy to throw. And if you threw it and it hit a deer or a person, it would make a big hole right through them and just pin them right to the ground. So, a lot of people thought Neanderthal was just kind of this ambush predator that just stabbed stuff. But now we know that they were really smart. They were on par with human beings. Some of the tools that they made were actually more advanced than humans at the same time, like this javelin thing. So like if you know all of those things, guess what? You're not going to go hungry. You're just not. And knowing the plants where you live, like right now, I know I can walk out in what looks like, a unmaintained yard right now, and there's food out there. There's carrots. There's different stuff I can eat. The lamb's quarter always is available. Now, we don't usually eat it. However, if you wanted to, you could have salads from that all day long, and there's just so much of it. And when you pick it off, it grows back. And all of these other plants are like that you could just be putting in areas, especially if you live, in the lush areas like you do, David, where you get rain constantly. You can count on rain throughout the year. You can do good, and you don't need anybody. It's like, World War II. Most people at that time for sure had a garden at their house, even if they weren't that good at it. They were still growing something, onions, potatoes, whatever it is. And think about how easy it is. Like when you go dig out potatoes, it takes like seconds to have a 10-pound bag. There's you $5. That's $5 or $10, depending on where you're at, a bag of potatoes. And now if you combine the art of saving it, you can be the leader of a new community, especially if you start teaching other people to do the same. But first, we got to get people to recognize that it's serious enough that you should actually be taking steps to plan ahead. And what if nothing ever happens? So what? You've taught another generation of people how to do things and made more content and made more creation and set up more infrastructure in case one day it does, because all empires fail, all of them so far. That we've ever known in history, they collapse for one reason or another, whether it's the earth decides to go crazy because of the sun, or it's just something that humans did, or, fads or events that happened that just destroyed everything or ways of life and lost information. But we can skip that. We don't have to participate in the same thing. And right now we still do have that magical internet that, has a lot of information. And if we utilize it before they completely transform it into something unrecognizable, then we'll be ahead up on that too.
Yeah, you made a Dr. Seuss rhyme there. You're going to wait for bread if you didn't think ahead. You could actually write a full children's book with these same kind of wisdom thoughts in there. Because really, if you didn't plan ahead, you are going to be waiting in a bread line. But, form it in the way that children will receive the message. And that's why we need to make the bread in the morning. And that's why we buy the 50-pound bags of flour, just like mommy said, That's what dad told you. You frame it anyway. So you're going to wait for bread if you didn't plan ahead. And you could do an entire series on that, too. Imagine how many nuggets there are through a day's conversation or listening to others. There's all types of rhymes that could be done. But, targeting toward the children, because they're the ones who are going to absorb it the most when they're younger. So that's why government always wants to take control of the youth. It doesn't matter what era it is, but that just seems to be a constant theme. They always want to get to the kids because the kids are programmable, but programming's just like AI. Who's putting the parameters in there? It depends on the coder, for a better term. Now, if you're trying to code in information for helping others, helping your community, sharing with your community, making sure that everybody is fed within your community, learning how to grow gardens, starting community gardens, starting seed banks. These are the kind of things that are positive going in, that they could bring that up through a lifetime. We just have been brainwashed out of going to our own neighborhoods and gardens to grow a lot of things. They got us and pushed us all into the supermarkets and the just-in-time delivery and the more choices. And, it took a fair 80 years to do that since World War II in the Victory Gardens. And especially it really hit in the 1960s with the advent of incredibly technologically superior refrigerators and ice cube trays and all that stuff. And you're like, what? Yeah. Before, refrigerators were rudimentary at best, and a lot of people grew their own, and they stored them in root cellars like you're talking about, otherwise known as a storm shelter. I used to go down to my grandparents. There's always this snake that lived, a big old black snake. Thing was like, for me, it was a mile long as a kid, but, I got used to it and didn't scare me. So I really haven't been afraid of snakes very much since that time because, it's just part of the landscape. But it was really only like a 6-foot long one. But as a kid, it's like, a mile long python down there going to eat you. But everybody had a snake in the cellar. It was just part of it. And you're lucky they're there because they eat all the mice and the rodents that come around. So I think if you're going to get a root cellar, you need to have a resident snake in there. Must. Cats, they don't want to stay down there. Snakes, on the other hand. But all of these bits of wisdom, even being able to develop a root cellar, install a root cellar, choose the proper location for a root cellar, anything like this is outside the reach of most normal people today. So that's why, seeking solutions and looking for, how do you find information on building a root cellar? Well, there's very few people around. That's like your next door neighbor that could help you build one over the weekend. If you're lucky enough to be living near the Amish, like we were talking to them. He's like, well, here in Tennessee, it rains a lot, but not this year. It's super drought, fire ban on everything. You can't have any fires anywhere. You can't even, have a cooking campfire in your front yard. It's fire ban right now because everything's just tinderbox here. But they were saying that since the water comes up, they put extra layers of tar on the cinder block that they were using, that they tar it up a good 3 feet off the ground for waterproofing, in addition to what they had for drainage, that they tar it. They tar the crap out of that thing. But in arid regions, maybe not so much. But, these old systems and ways for us to preserve food and the idea of sharing with the community has kind of been beaten out of us as this individualistic mantra of the day has swept through the last 20 to 30 years. Even, I was talking to somebody and I was asking my parents, like, aside from your two next door neighbors and maybe somebody down the street who was a friend that's been there forever, like, how many of these neighbors do you know all around here? And they were like, well, not really very many because they have kids over there. We don't really talk with them. They just moved in. The other person passed away. They're moving out. Their house is for sale. And it's this nonstop churning of younger families moving in, older people passing away, friends moving away. they're all downsizing now. Oh, they're getting older. I'm going to, sell the house and go live with my children, take care of the grandchildren. Like almost everybody, a lot of people have known if he passed away or moved away. So even talking to my parents, they only know probably 6 neighbors, 7 neighbors maximum. But they used to know everybody, But now it's just a handful of people. And I was thinking, well, what are you guys going to do here? You're in a neighborhood. I'm out on a farm over there, not too far. And they're like, well, I just hope it doesn't get that bad. And I was like, all right. Yeah, you can take the horse to the water. So I'm always asking my dad, because when I was younger, me and my cousins would go to my grandparents' house and we'd repaint the house. They had a big old farmhouse. We repaint that. We repaint the barn out there. And my grandma always had this like half-acre, big, huge garden. And I was always asking my dad, like, hey, what did grandma and grandpa do when this, and it's like, well, I forgot, that's a long time ago, Dave. And even my dad, who was born in the 40s, that had those parents growing up that were my grandparents that knew the old ways through the Depression, that were born in, the 1910s, teens, lived as, older than teenagers coming into the Great Depression. They had to learn all these things, stay alive, etc. But my dad couldn't remember a lot of the lessons that they had passed on to him. So like 3rd generation down, me asking him now, after both grandparents passed away, my dad's getting old. And, it's just like, I can't remember. That was a long time ago. So even people who lived through it that didn't really practice it, they're losing the information as well. So, it's going to be starting with the children to teach them to, keep some of these old skills. And I'm wondering, Neanderthals, etc. I think things were far more advanced. They keep trying to tell us that, it was Denisovans and it was Neanderthals and we're the Homo sapien sapien. But I think even within this, and maybe I'm going off on the wrong way here, Ransom, but the Homo sapiens, as we know ourselves as the human race, there was an invasive hominid species that was part of this race that split off as sociopath and psychopath that now dominates the regular Homo sapien on the planet. It's like within the Homo sapien itself, it nudged and split into 2. It kind of forked off into the 4% of psychopaths and sociopaths that then use that power and non-caring and non-empathy to jump over the other 96%, and we call those world leaders, government officials. But you can see that invasive hominid species is in play out in the open now. And, where does it take us next? Especially with this integration of AI, where they're really pushing to integrate our bodies and minds with tech. That's not natural. That's not human.
Yeah. I've seen arguments about that exact thing. And they were talking about how psychopaths and sociopaths have, a slightly different shaped frontal cortex. And an argument could be made that they are at least a subspecies of the now hybrid species we call Homo sapien sapien. What's weird to me, like, when I look back, and they have all the dates all messed up. There's a bunch of purposeful confusion when it comes to the history of man and how we got here. And I think that's because they like to manipulate ideas of the newer world that has nothing to do with how we arose here on the earth. But we know Cro-Magnon was running around Europe. We know he was mixing with Denisovan. We know he was mixing with Neanderthal. And we're not talking about just for the 5,000-year overlap that they theorized before. But now genetic evidence shows that at least 100,000 years ago, and they trick you too with this. There's a modern Homo sapien, in other words, a modern human, and then there's an anatomically correct modern human, and they have these 2 different terms, but they sometimes don't tell you which is which because there's we can't really get into that because you'll get in trouble, but they have reasons to manipulate this, and instead of just letting everyone on the planet know, there is scientifically no race. There is a hybrid species of hominid that we now call Homo sapien sapien, and we mixed all over the place, and we were picking up their technology, we're picking up their genes. We don't even know who created what. We've thought for a long time that regular man created art and all of these technologies, but it may be the fact that, like all great inventors, we didn't invent it, we stole it. It could have even went down that way, and we'll never really know. But it doesn't matter, because now we're in the opportunity to do that on purpose, and that's steal all of these techniques. Like I said, I was
This
watching
is
them.
the story of the worst road trip ever. In April of 1846, a man named James Fraser Reed, an Illinois businessman, eager to build a greater fortune in the rich land of
Well, only certain people are going to be able to figure it out, and then there's going to be mass casualties.
This
We'll be
is the
right
story
back.
of
Thank you for
the worst road trip ever. In April of 1846, a man named James Fraser Reed, an Illinois businessman, eager to build a greater fortune in the rich land of California, leads 9 covered wagons out of Springfield, Illinois, on the 2,500-mile journey to California, in what would become one of the greatest tragedies in the history of westward migration. Reed found others seeking to find fortune, adventure, and new beginnings on this perilous trek across the West. Among them was the Donner family. Others like the Graves, Breens, Murphys, Eddies, McCutcheons, Kesebergs, and the Wolfingers would come too. The successful Reed was determined his family would not suffer on the long journey, as his wagon was an extravagant 2-story with a built-in iron stove, spring-cushioned seats, and bunks for sleeping, and 2 hired servants to help with the workload. Reed's 12-year-old Virginia dubbed it the Pioneer Palace Car. Also in the group were the families of George and Jacob Donner. George Donner was a successful 62-year-old farmer who had migrated 5 times before settling in Springfield, Illinois, along with his brother Jacob. Obviously adventurous, the brothers decided to make one last trip to California. At the bottom of Jacob Donner's saddlebag was a copy of Lansford Hastings's Emigrant's Guide, with its tantalizing talk of a faster route to the Garden of the Earth. It's tough, but the going's good. Tamsin Donner writes in her journal, I could never have believed we could have traveled so far with so little difficulty. Indeed, if we do not experience anything worse, I shall say the trouble is all in getting started, but as leader of the wagon train, Tamsin's husband George Donner is aware there's one final obstacle to their journey, the Sierra Nevada, with peaks up to 14,000 feet. It's known if you fail to clear the mountain passes before the first snow falls, the repercussions and results can be both horrifying and deadly. As the Donner party approaches Utah, George Donner makes a pivotal flaw in his decision to splinter off from the main party. Hastings Cutoff says it's a fine level road with plenty of water and grass, saving 400 miles. As it turns out, Donner's information is wrong. In fact, the so-called shortcut adds at least 100 miles to the journey. High in the Sierra Nevada, the Donner party enters the Truckee Pass. They're only 30 miles from the California plains, but supplies are dangerously low, and traveling through the mountains is taking its toll, ending in a broken axle. The Donner party stops to make repairs, but that night, 5 feet of snow falls. Soon the drifts are 60 feet deep. The Donner party will be stranded for 5 months. In just 3 weeks, they've eaten all their food. Then they kill their pack animals. Next, they eat charred bones, twigs, bark, leaves, and dirt. Finally, a suggestion was made that were one to die, the rest might live. Cannibalism. On Christmas Day, 1846, a Christmas feast like few others takes place. They devour their first human. Bodies are cut up, flesh labeled so people don't eat their own kin. Later, 4 rescue parties bring out some survivors. The very last finds a man named Ludwig alone. Around him, a scene that haunts us today and will continue to leave a lasting mark in history. Ludwig is surrounded by bones and entrails, a 2-gallon kettle filled to the brim with human blood. Also nearby is George Donner's body, his skull split open, his brain removed. Tamsin Donner's body is never found. It also seems a man named William Foster shot 2 Miwok Native American guides named Lewis and Salvador for food, which is the only instance of anyone in the Donner-Reed party that was murdered and eaten. The rest of the cannibalized were already dead. They took the survivors to Sutter's Fort, California, by the route that is now known as Donner Pass. Stranded in the early snows of the Sierra Nevada mountains, nearly half the travelers died of starvation and illness. Even today, Interstate 80 has to be closed occasionally due to heavy snows and blizzards. Only 45 of the original 81 members of the Donner Party survived. This truly was the worst road trip ever, which reminds us not to be complacent but instead be proactive with our prepping. We don't have to worry about not having food to last. We have My Patriot Supply. And right now, you can save $200 on a 3-month food kit with Adapt 2030. Adapt and stay prepared.
Here inside that music, and it resonates, I will never give up, and nor should any of you out there either. That's the whole thing about this media and this spin machine, is they want you to give up before the battle's been even fought. And that is the saddest thing. They want to demoralize and remove your energy from you, and you're going to give it to them willingly by doing that. I will not. That's why we're here every Thursday night, so we can continue to bring you information just like this. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, now revolution.radio, alternative internet talk radio, voice and opinions, finding solutions. Consider a donation. You'll find the donate tab on the nav bar. Patreon, donor box, direct payment. We can do check, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash for those of you out there in crypto land. But as you can see, how many venues have already gone off air, been stifled? And now we got these clowns in the UK talking about Telegram needs to be taken down because their bevy of misinformation talking about, well, Telegram spreads this, that, or the other lies. And I'm like, well, wait, your newspaper spread how many lies? Weapons of mass destruction. Again and again and again. Gulf of Tonkin. How many times can we go through it before we start to realize that the greatest disinformation campaigns have been put through our print media for decades, plural, 50 years or more? So as we move forward, the information war is getting tighter as more venues are getting shut down. And even Ransom and myself on our own social media channels, some people would say you're shadow banned, and they say, well, that's an excuse for putting out crap content because you're not getting any reach. I would very much disagree with you that there's certain topics. I understand if you're doing an entertainment channel or something and people aren't grabbing onto it, or you're trying to do a comedy channel or a music channel and people aren't gravitating to it. I get it. But in the true delivery of information of things that are counter narrative, they are not pushed. You're not on the suggested, counting is, miscounted. And it's just the way it is. And you can accept that the way it is and say, I don't care, I'm still going to push forward, or you can stop working on this. I understand that things are being suppressed. That just gives me more energy to keep pushing through, because eventually we're going to break through the chrysalis. And it's all about sharing information as we move forward. Especially, we were going to talk last week about some of the shows that I had done previously over the weeks leading up into January, and a couple of these things were, incredible storms. Like the noctilucent clouds are not in the wrong, they're in the wrong season, and they're incredibly vivid and bright, but they're in the wrong season. So we start to look at where's all this moisture coming from in the upper atmosphere? Well, the Hungatonga eruption explains it, but they're trying to blame it on Starlink launches for Elon Musk's satellites. Again, obfuscating from a very real natural phenomenon now bending our upper atmospheres. Moisture content, i.e. weather, although weather isn't in the mesosphere. But still, there has to be an excuse why you're seeing clouds in the wrong season. That should normally be deep winter, freezing cold clouds that require those types of temperatures to even form, and you have to have the moisture up there. So wait a second, we're getting middle of winter temperatures in the upper atmosphere along with the moisture at the same time, and these banging displays of noctilucent clouds across the northern hemisphere. And their explanation is Elon Musk rockets. Don't look over here. Nothing to think about. But I'm like, wait a minute. If it's that cold up there already, reflective particles, and it's that cold, how's that going to work its way down through the lower atmosphere here into our what we consider weather systems up to like 30,000 feet? And we come to the pay for play models. We talked about that. They want you to pay to have clean water now. Not clean water delivered through your tap, but it looks clean when you put it in a glass. But they want you to now pay a surcharge and a fee, a monthly surcharge, so they can filter out forever chemicals. So you can get the clean water. It looks pure. It looks clean. You put it in a glass, totally clear. Or you can get the upgrade, and now you can get those forever chemicals filtered out of your water, not delivered to your home. So you start to look at this and go, the world we're moving into is going to be carefully curated. You'll either have the money for a healthy life or you will not. I mean, right now you can choose to eat fast food. You can choose to eat junk food. You can choose to eat box foods. You can choose to grow your own. You can choose farmers markets. We have that choice. But it seems that this subscription model quality of life thing is definitely being pushed. And, the last hour talking about how integral and important water is, but now they're going to give you a clean A or B choice. You can have water, but it's got all the forever chemicals in it, or you need to pay a monthly surcharge, and we will filter those out and then deliver them to your home. Cleaner water without the PFAs in it. So the world spins. And Ransom, I know you had something to continue on with the idea from the last hour, so let it rip, man. Let's talk about some solutions as we can. Oh, and one last thing, everybody, we're going to do the show notes every week. It's a quick 8-point bullet points about the topics we're talking about or have talked about in the show. Start conversations with that. Please consider going to oilseedcrops.org and going right over to where it says show notes, and then you can put your email in there, and we'll give it. We don't do anything with your list. We just keep it ourselves as something to be able to deliver you quality content of a bullet point of everything we've spoken about in the show. That's oilseedcrops.org. OIL, like one barrel of oil. Seed, like a seed you plant in the ground, SEED. And then crops that we harvest every year, plural. We harvest CROPS, crops. Oilseedcrops.org. And head over there, put your email in, and we'll make sure that you get the bullet point of all the highlights and different conversation points that we're discussing tonight. Now, with that aside, Ransom, welcome back.
Yeah, I think earlier you mistook me. What I meant in a 10-year time period was that a change will happen in which every one of us will realize that it's completely changed beyond, just the year before that into a new realm of rules to deal with reality. And part of that's it's going to be this robotic aspect of things that people aren't used to. They are used to now integrating their life with, little devices and things like that. But I want to talk about the actual changeover. How long does it take? Like say we implemented some of the most nightmarish scenarios within the next 10 years. How long would it take for the world to be so unrecognizable that you wouldn't even know that that's the way it was before that? And I think that number is actually 20 years. And,
Well, wait, I'll stop you and say, how hungry can you make the people to embrace the change? If you put a mass famine across the planet, that will actuate in under a year.
Yes. But what I'm kind of talking about is the generational changeover of the amount of people on the planet that will actually be doing things or having to deal with stuff. Like, so for example, right now, the U.S., the left and the right are arguing about this bill, the SAFE Act, that they're trying to pass that makes it undeniable that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in our elections, right? And then, so the left is arguing, well, you already have to be a U.S. citizen, and that's just preposterous. And you guys are trying to limit Americans, ways they can vote and stuff. They don't give any proof of this. They just say that. The other side is trying to say, well, we need to know who every single person is so they can vote. The problem with this argument right now is it doesn't even matter. That argument does not matter, and this is why. Because in 20 years, the 30 million new people in the U.S. are going to produce offspring, and guess what? They're not from the same group of infertile people of the Western world because they're new arrivals, and they're just hooking up to the matrix, so to speak. So in 20 years, all of those people will be, used to the GMO food. They will have integrated into our medical system. They will, do what it takes to survive here. However, all of their children are now a new, who knows how many million people voting block. I would assume that it would be a multiplication of the 30 million. So in other words, 60, 90 million more people if all of them, or a portion of them, were having children, and they outproduced other groups in which they're doing. That's a mathematical truth that's happening. So in 20 years, the demographic for the voting bloc has changed. Not only that, in 20 years, the amount of upgrades and advancements in artificial intelligence and biometric recognition will be off the charts. It's something you can't even imagine. I mean, right now, people can't even wrap their head around the fact that there's a constant 3D picture of you in your home because you have phones, laptops, televisions, remote controls, security systems, smart stoves, smart ovens, whatever, smart refrigerators, smart everything, smart meters. And your neighbors do as well. Plus, there's satellites interlinking with that, and it's all on a constant back and forth data stream on the internet. And people just don't get the amount of intrusiveness that's already there. And that's not counting every keystroke, every word spoken, every, eye movement with the retinal scan of what you've looked at, what you've liked, what you've integrated into your lifestyle. All of that now recorded, and all of these people that will grow up in that system and now be a part of the voting bloc. So they'll be used to any kind of technological propaganda or new system given to them within 20 years. Now let's go on the scientific, kind of out there land. What if the majority of all of these people, because we brought up that the new draft wording actually implies that they're going to use everybody here within the boundaries of the United States if they put forward conscription and they instituted a draft again. And this includes everybody between the ages of 18 and 26 years old, whether or not they're a citizen or they're a non-citizen, whether or not they're male or female, or they identify as a cat or whatever. They're because they have now a Social Security number, which, by the way, they're doing programs to give people that are non-citizens Social Security numbers so that they could pay in tax. There's all kinds of different stuff going on. So 20 years, everyone's known this. The Romans knew it. That guy with the funny mustache in the 30s in Germany knew it. He said, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what you own. All I want is your children. And in 20 years, they're going to say what I want them to say. They're going to think what I want them to think. They will be changed in the way that we changed them. Now you add in the nightmare scenario of this hydrogel platform, which is the integration of biology and technology at a concept that people just, they can't think about. It's too big of an idea. They get the computer. They get the neural link. Oh, they're going to put wires in your brain. It's well beyond that. The systems they have planned. So they now can just create whatever they want. So in 20 years, any government around the world, whether an extreme event happened, a mass emergency, a mass die-off, whatever happened, anybody still within power, within continuity, now has the technology to have a new population, a new army, a new breeding population, a new servant class within 20 years. That's the 20-year time span it takes. Now, keep in mind that all of these groups in continuity will be continuing their advancements in the genetics and in the technological fields of robotics and artificial intelligence and learning machines and quantum computing. So it's kind of a real mind blower, as Max Headroom, kind of the first on TV representation of a human being trapped in a digital dissimulation of interconnected corporations pressed to you by the state. I mean, that was a perfect example, that show. It was like a Marxist future where the Marxists are all the actual giant capitalist corporations and their buddies in government.
Perhaps he really did break through the matrix, and then it was out into the open, so they had to make excuses of where we were going with your digital avatar.
Oh, one more
It wouldn't
thing.
surprise me if that was truly broken through the matrix, and since people had seen it, that was, well, it's cat's out of the bag now. We need to start, well, coming more clean and trying to develop this to integrate everybody into it since they've seen it already. It's like, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. But again, looking back at the 1950s sci-fi, they did hit some things on the head, but they sure didn't hit this integration and nanotechnology inside the physical, vessel itself, and that programmability inside there. They didn't hit that or even touch it with a 10-foot pole. You notice that they touched on everything else through the last sci-fi era, for the last, so Star Trek and, Danger Will Robinson and everything in between. Even like, what's that, iRobot and everything? Okay. Everything in between there, there's very, very, very little talked about with nanotechnology except the beginning of, forget the movie, he drank the black liquid and dissolved into him and then fell into the river and then it contaminated the planet.
Prometheus.
Yes. Other than that, that's what nanotechnology can do. You disobey our orders and you turn into that Anunnaki sitting on the riverbed that turned into like a black swirl of dots and then just disappeared out of the physical form. You notice how none of these shows really ever go into that nanotech inside the body. If they do, it's remote at best of what the real purpose is or how it can truly be integrated inside the human physiology, especially if it can connect neural networks in the brain coming into a different magnetic field. And, this is a lot of, notice that the sci-fi doesn't touch that very much.
Well, let me ask you this one question, though, to add on to that. There's not that many beyond the idea that you would just upload digitally. And that's not the same thing as the merging of the technology and biology as one thing. And think about this. If you could shrink any kind of technology small as you could, how could you distinguish that from life itself in the first place when it's built with the same atoms? But my question was, check this out. Biden, he accidentally called the president of Ukraine, President Putin. He said, "I'll hand it over to the president of Ukraine, Putin." And the little short guy there got all upset, obviously, because it was another gaffe. He calls President, Vice President Kamala Harris Trump. He just goes on and on with these gaffes, right? But here's an opinion poll. And remember, I called this that eventually they're just going to say, you know what? You just need an AI to tell the people what to do. So we just need an AI to tell the president what to do. So it's time for Biden campaign to embrace AI so they could just make an AI that doesn't have gaffes. He doesn't actually make, racist comments and things on accident or say, bad things that he's not supposed to say. They'll just, instead of making him read a teleprompter, the teleprompter will be right in his mind. And he'll just say what they tell him to say. That's the reality of mixing biology and technology is, you could have a teletype of what you want that person to say. And now they're just a biological person that so happened to get elected as president, allegedly, right? And they can make them say whatever they want. That's the era we're in. And they've admitted that the AI is writing the speeches. It's in control of the missiles. All this stuff, and we got this bumbling guy that's supposed to be pretending to run everything. Do you think, that's where it's going? It's where the AI just programs you up to the minute.
Yeah, and again, if you're using, what was that, 11 labs to try to voice over that? So, you hijack the physical, and then you could insert the digital, which is very much the same as demon possession, is it not? Because what's inside that person that's taken over the physical vessel is not of this person, and it's from a different realm, for a better term, that's inhabiting the physical body and mind of the host. So it's really no different than a drop-in, but you're dropping in technology versus dropping in some sort of spiritual entity. And that's where it gets a little bit kind of hazy. Because again, I'll bring you back to Gary Vaynerchuk's new book. I'm not trying to sell it or anything. I'm just saying it is one of the most riveting. This dude's been ahead of everything social media since the beginning. Like, if you read that book, Crush It, back in 2008 or something, if you would read that now, you'd be like, this the crystal ball and the attention economy and all these different things. But this guy's been so far ahead on where the consciousness of humanity is moving by social media itself, on how social media is forming the society. So he's kind of doing that yin yang on it, deep diving in the circles between each of the dualities. But the thing is, he's talking about AI influencers. So if anybody's unfamiliar, it's a digital avatar, and the technology is so good now that you actually make a fake person. You can create them, male, female, insert the voice. The program does the rest of it for you for body movements. And then you insert green screen behind. You can put the products. You can put, different locations and then do products inside that. But his whole thing is like, if you're an influencer out there right now, or anybody who's involved in some sort of creative that you've taken in a lifetime to learn, especially with, something that you're doing with digital design or some sort of graphic design, you're going to have to use these tools as a partner to help you think and move through it and use the technology at hand. Because I myself was looking into doing some websites using AI to just put a couple pictures in, have it create some landing pages and this sort of thing. I'm telling you, before, even with the drag and drop like a Wix or something, it would take you hours, if not a full day, to do it and make it look good, tweak it, get all. This thing does it for you in like 10 minutes or under, and you have something equally as good where you'd have spent an entire day using a Wix drag and drop with all your images and all your text and all your copy already ready to insert into that page by the time you tweaked it, versus something doing that for you in under 10 minutes to get that same quality after an entire day's work that fast. And this whole thing about the AI influencers too, like talking about a complete digital revolution where you are not going to know who is real and who is not. This is the blur between reality, that humans are going to be relegated to some sort of subservience level. And if they cannot find meaning of life, some sort of meaning, because a lot of people are tied to their jobs. Yeah, I'm a this, I'm a that. I graduated from here. I have this degree. I have this many years at the law practice or whatever it is. I'm a doctor for this long. I was a newscaster for this long. I was this, that, and the other. I was the top salesperson at this place. That will mean nothing moving forward. Absolutely nothing. As much as the internet is oxygen for our world now, truly within 10 years, AI will replace that and be the oxygen for the world moving forward. So think about what Ransom was talking about, of the blend of the physical and the technological in our bodies, or wanted to be this cohesiveness of tech and flesh. But then you step outside that realm, and we're also getting inundated by that same visual and auditory complete dominance by AI in this. What we consider the five senses are going to be overwhelmed by these things that can, in real time, almost read your thoughts, that have been into all of everything that you've ever done online is integrated into this, where it's literally by the second. And the way that it was spun off is each individual viewer will have a different version of the same exact advertisement given to you in real time, or even a half of or a 1 second lag versus somebody else. And he comes into this and is talking about, even as of we sit today, when you're reading the comments in a feed, generally you're all going to see different comments based on the preferences, the videos you've watched, the comments you've said yourself, influencers that you follow, advertisements that you've clicked on. The way they give you the comments to even read on blog posts or in like Twitter or whatnot, it's morphed in and tailored for the individual for what they think they want to hear, to reinforce the thoughts that get them then to agree to move on to the next step, whether that be an opt-in or whether that be to click on something, whether it be to buy on something, whether it be to join a group, whether it be to sign on to some sort of petition or whatever it is. That is being done in real time as we speak today. This is not looking into the future. That your comments that you're reading are different based on the way you have interacted with the net in the past. Now take it a next step forward. Now all you need to do is integrate some visuals into that, integrate the individual product into that, and we are really stepping into. And if we're going to put in some holographic or hologram glasses or whatever on top of that, then the humanity, the Homo sapien as we know it, would be finished and will be an extinct species in a very short amount of time. It's going to be there's going to be a handful of people who can step away from that, but how many millions can step away versus how many billions will be immersed into this new world that we're moving into? So the whole thing is not to scare, but to be incredibly aware of how fast this technology is moving. And you can choose to integrate in it and try to have it as a partner in your thinking and an assistant along your journey, which I'm borderline. I'm really at the edge of like, man, do I want to learn all this new stuff? But it's not even learning. It's just about prompting to get this to work for you faster. Whoever's not going to be using AI in video creation is just going to fall off the face of the earth. Because there are people who are putting out 10 times, 18 times, 20 more, 50 more times content in a day, integrating with AI than they ever could on their own. And and then blasting that across the social media sphere. And then you start to get, these overlapping messages across multiple parallels of social medias. And maybe it's not the same one person, but it's the same message blasted out in mass. So again, the social movements, which could have taken a decade or years prior, are probably going to happen in weeks. Because if that messaging comes across with the digital avatars and they've already wired in what your preferences are, it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you sit on politically or religiously. It's going to target your emotional feed and your need of acceptance and want and something greater. And watch how this thing could bend through the entire social structure of every single possible social media out there, all in unison, all at the same time, all with the same messaging, through all of these different digital AI influencers and avatars that everybody is following, or everybody will follow in the future. It will be almost an instantaneous flip of narrative, far faster than it is today, far faster. Now it takes a little bit of time to build up. It takes a little bit of time to send it through the social. It gets time for people to get that, not the awareness of understanding. That's because the age brackets are different. But think about if it's the same AI influencer that's targeted for each individual age bracket with the same message delivered with a different format on short content, long format, going into the audio. And it doesn't matter where it is, but it'll be the same message repeated, dissected, sliced and diced to get the exact same outcome from every single demographic across the way, from like a kindergartner, a fifth grader, a teenager, mid-20s, and all the way up to the retirees. It's all going to be fake avatars, AI-created individuals that are going to control the information span, the information highway. The information is going to be the attention domination sphere. And at that point, whoever wants to run with this or whoever can control this technology effectively enough to do messaging within that and control all of these AI influencers in unison by the microsecond, and then control the comments coming out of everything you view. I mean, this is incredible, and it's scary at the same time, the way that humans are really nothing more than sheep and farm animals with a sheepdog behind it barking, making you go this way or go that way. This technology is really, it's off-world at best in the way that it is going to not so much program, but manipulate humanity into moving in as a school of fish by the second And the dissection of the interconnectedness of one human to another will be usurped by these people that are tailor-made for each individual on the planet. If there's 8 billion people right now, there's going to be 8 billion AI influencers, and each one will be assigned to a person or a cluster of people that resonate with them so heavily, so succinctly that it's almost soulmate connectiveness. And this is what's being built in currently. And then, hit what Ransom said about then you integrate inside the physiology with the technology, but on the outer sphere, that extra layer out on the bubble, they're building avatars for you and me and everybody out there where you will not know what's real, what thoughts are real. Is even the spinnings of the world real? Because I swear to you, I saw that picture of Putin and Modi shaking hands. And I've seen thousands of AI images, and Ransom creates them. And I swear to you, I was looking at that going, that is an AI-generated image. I can tell, they're talking about this being one of the world's biggest events of these two leaders coming together. And I looked at those images, and I was like, those are AI-generated images. Did this meeting even take place? And was it stuck on my feed? And, I start to look at it, did it really take place? Now I'm starting to question a lot of things I see out there because the photos just seem a little bit off. And once you've seen thousands and thousands of AI generated images, you'll start to know what I mean. They just seem a little bit off, especially the depth or the shadowing, the sort of backdrops that are too perfect, the things that, there's just little clues inside these AI generated images that are, easy now to spot because it's in its infancy, the tech of it. And the imagery, but give it another, 6 months to a year, and you'll not be able to see the fakery in it. But right now, I'm saying that Putin Modi image, it was AI generated, at least the version that I'd seen of it. So anyway, man, I was going somewhere with the point, I lost it.
Well, it makes sense that the intelligence agencies would be putting out all kinds of deep fakes, and you're just talking about an image. In real time right now, they can make video that's not the real person. I mean, back in what was it? I think 2008 or so, they had the AI creating a video of George Bush saying things that he didn't say. And that's quite some time ago. We're in 2024 now. A lot of these toys are, that the intelligence agencies were using 10, 20, 30 years ago are now, out on the market for people to play with as apps and different things. But just imagine how good the real deal intel agencies have on these kind of programs, the deep fakes, the animation of video, not just images, like a fake image. The stuff I'm using is really the low quality, free stuff. But the more you pay, the more access do you get to these servers that are cranking out some really, realistic stuff. But it's not just images. It's video. They can make anybody say anything, anywhere, anytime, which, we've joked about in the past. But in reality now, there is a degree of, discernment you're going to have to use when looking at something to know whether or not it's a fake. Is this real video? Did they really say that? And it doesn't even matter. I mean, think about how the propaganda right now works, where they just say something. They say so-and-so said something, and then there'll be, 100 articles that say that they said it. No one shows a clip. No one shows audio. So they already have great propaganda where they don't even have to use these tricks. So imagine if they want to double, triple down, or quadruple down on a reality that you're supposed to believe. Imagine the Gulf of Tonkin in today's age. We would be able to show you satellite photographs, real-time video that looked like it matched the satellite images of a ship getting destroyed, and it would all be AI, completely fake, none of it real, because you can not only create things from scratch, but you can manipulate real images. So in other words, I could get on a broadcast with like a point something delay on it and use AI to continually change an image that you're looking at in real time. And, I've brought up this in the past that companies out there are making things that can read or print out basically a text of what you're thinking. They have machines that can tell what you're feeling. They have machines that can measure, your physiological responses, knowing if you're nervous or you're whatever. It knows when your gait is off. And all of these things can be put together into one learning machine that could look at someone and take that information and not only keep track of them in real time, but create a fake image based on that anywhere, anytime. So, what if the government got to a point where they just decide that you're a citizen with the wrong opinion? They just show up to your house and they show the public a video of you doing something or being somewhere or being connected to something, and everybody will be completely convinced. Not only that, the jury would probably be convinced, making it, they do have alternate technologies that scam out and find out that this is a fake, that this is this video is not real. And thank God for those things. But the question is how and which one will advance faster and, keep getting upgraded. But right now, I would say that it's already, you're going to have to use discernment when looking at any picture. I come across thousands probably of fake images on Twitter, and I spot them out easy, little things that don't make sense or it's messed up. There's popular ones going out about every politician and Epstein right now, and you look at them and the legs are backwards or some people are missing an arm, things like that, but they're pushing them, and there's real people that look at it and go, oh, wow, that proves it for me, and they make up their mind. And then you have real propaganda programs. You brought up Operation Mockingbird. That's just straightforward lying or misrepresenting events or things that happen, and then using music and tones of color that these companies have perfected over the years, and flicker rate. And they use all these to play with your emotions. Now we're adding in AI and learning machine power. Right. So now you can manipulate what they're seeing, and you could even change it if the people aren't responding. So imagine this: in 10 years, all of the TVs or whatever that people watch in their house have upgraded to facial and retinal recognition. And just like I was telling you now, all of these devices right now are putting out an infrared beam constantly. Your phone, your tablet, all of the smart devices in your house. So anybody that wanted to could get a real-time, three-dimensional picture of what's going on in your house just from the technology right now. So you imagine in the future, the TV is still doing this, or the game, the PlayStation or whatever, is doing this in real time, and it realizes that you're not paying attention no more. So it changes the speed, the tempo, the color, the excitement, and then you pay attention again, and then it realizes that maybe you're not agreeing with this. So it starts spinning the conversation more for you to agree with it and pulling on your heartstrings. All of that is in the realm of possibility, not only going forward in the future, but they're already using it. Think about this debate that they wanted 2.5-minute delay on. Why do you think they wanted that? They wanted that in case one of the candidates melted down too bad and either said something true that they didn't want people to hear, or just made some kind of rambling, bumbling gaffe, like I was saying the other guy did. And, you think about all of these concepts, and how do I know that they're not already using this program to remotely control this meat sack we call Joe Biden right now? How do I know somebody's not just writing that stuff in there, and, every time they get a bad Wi-Fi connection or something, he starts saying weird stuff? It is like Weekend at Bernie's, except for, Star Trek level tech that's real. And, me and my son have been watching different stuff kind of for the reason of looking for predictive programming. So I'm already looking for it. And we watched this show called The Boys, which is about a company that created a formula that creates people that have superpowers. And then, the people get crazy with the superpowers and turn into sociopaths and psychopaths and feel like they're a breakaway, human. And while we're talking about that, that's the idea Musk has for us. And that's what we've been talking about is we're at that point right now, the overlap in Neanderthal, Denisovan, and Homo sapien, Cro-Magnon, whatever you want to call them, the overlap. And it only took that 20 years I was talking about earlier for a new species to take over. That's all it would take. If all the other ones changed, say they mutated, say became infertile or got sick or whatever it was, in just 20 years, the new species takes over. And you got Elon Musk talking about, hey, we're going to go to Mars. We're going to necessarily, that's going to split us into different subspecies and things like that. So this is real deal stuff. But then you have to bring yourself back down to earth and realize before any of that, futuristic, eugenics, inspired 15-minute city, complete track and trace, they have to reduce the population by a lot. And we know that they're not only into that in the different occult ways that they think, but just as a necessary outcome for a new world order is that they got to reduce the population of all these old people so that 20-year period could take place where it doesn't matter. The majority of the population that's in control of the militaries, is the workforce, is the voting class, has all been indoctrinated for decades into whatever the new algorithm is putting out. And people think, well, what am I going to be doing in 20 years? The question is are you going to be here? Are you going to be able to find enough solutions to navigate this ever-changing thing and then throw World War III on top of the mix? And then you'll know that, they are planning for a great reduction. After that reduction, that's that 10-year period I was talking about. After the reduction of population, then overnight, it's a new world, baby. We're in a new bonded biological, technological, mixed world. And like I said, if you keep advancing AI and nanotechnology, at which point does it get small enough that it's unrecognizable or indistinguishable from life itself?
Well, it sounds like it's time for those 10 years to pop the champagne and celebrate. But if you're looking at the fourth turning, generally after this collapse phase, you get into the hopeful phase, and then coming into, like what they would consider the roaring 20s phase after that. So it does go through these phases, and you're right, after 20, it would be at the bottom of the collapse phase. We're already about 5 years into it. So then you get 10 years of that hopeful momentum, and then it just rocket ships up. And that is pretty much what we enjoyed through the 90s into the 2000s before the 2001 incident that changed the world, and then also the 2008-9 financial crisis. That was kind of at the end where the tapering off is before it comes into that collapse period. So one thing I wanted to add, Ransom, was as we're looking around the world, all this content, there's programs out there that people have been working on to take all content like you or I would do, like this program tonight, and turn it into every language on the planet, all in unison, so anybody can hear all of our messages across all different languages and load it up into specific channels that were created in each individual language for you. Now, we're talking about something at scale here that is unprecedented, where Ransom and I's thoughts can be translated into Swahili and then loaded into a YouTube-specific Swahili locale YouTube channel, or anywhere. Italian, like he and I would be speaking Italian tonight and we'd be in the Eurozone. But think about that, taking everybody's thoughts and words and translating it into every single language across the planet in real time and taking that up into the net for anybody to be able to view or to see. I mean, that's massive in itself. Like, this almost brings us back to the Tower of Babel again, where all apparently, if you believe in the stories or you believe in the legends or you have some sort of open mind to take a look at what was possible pre-Anunnaki, that all the world shared a unified language. Now, again, looking at today's tech, where I just told you that all content in every language can be, disseminated at scale and in real time. Now, would that not be the same of what was talked about with the Tower of Babel, that everybody spoke the same language, and then, suddenly, they can't speak the same language. They're building this tower. They're going to come and overthrow us. And then they said that it was smashed and everybody scattered to the wind and languages were blown to the wind. Okay, would that not be just simply wiping out all of the AI that allowed us to communicate in real time amongst all languages, amongst all peoples? The Tower of Babel, I really believe this is a cycle. We're back at it again. We're coming to a unified language across the planet. It's not that the language we speak, but it's the technology that allows us the languages to speak that we all understand, translated in real time for us to understand, So that is one language for the planet. It's not a language, it is a code. And this is where it comes back to. Now, I could rip your code apart, and then suddenly everybody is back to their native tongue, and they don't understand everybody else. Because as this technology continues to evolve, the ability or even reasons for us to learn other languages, there would be no reason. Why would you learn another language or even have books or even have the ability to teach another language if we have a unified set of technology that allows us to communicate in real time with everybody else in any language across the planet at all? Doesn't matter if it's only spoken by a few hundred people in the middle of the Amazon, that language is also included in the sets. As long as they're able to transcribe and turn that language into written words, and those words pronounced, then it would be in the database. So the Tower of Babel, was it really we spoke the same language, or was it the same code that is popping its head back out again? And we're back in on this yin-yang of energies, and this electronic frequency is back with us once again. Because all things are just a cycle. And what would that be when we come together as a unified species, all speaking the same language? Now, you might say in the beginning, some of these controllers would want us to speak the same language so we could all abide by and all agree to or be pushed into the same narratives and agree on that's the way the world should be. In unison across all 8 billion people, languages won't matter. The messaging will be pushed, and it would be great for controllers to have all 8 billion people in unison, all agreeing, using their own languages to communicate, to agree, to even strengthen the agreement of whatever narratives are pushed or agendas are, given to us. But give it a few years, and then there's going to be some dissent amongst there, and then these same language programs will allow those that do not agree with the system to communicate amongst each other. And when that rolls over to 51% or whatever percentage, I absolutely guarantee you that will be crushed, and that technology will be removed from the ability of anybody to participate in it, because that will cause the downfall of the system. And it would be too much of a catastrophic loss for these families that have been in power for 6,000 years or so to lose that control because humanity finally unites against them and takes our planet back. You see, this is the Tower of Babel story I'm telling you right here, but move it into our modern day era with this telecommunications connectivity, and now we have this programming language at all languages. So how much time are we talking about here between cycles? And how long is it now? My question would be, how long before this technology takes shape enough where it's integrated into everybody? Like again, in the beginning of the show, I'm saying we don't even talk about the internet. It's not like, hey, did you go on the net today? Did you look at the internet on the computer today? We talked about that 1995, 1998, 2000. Nobody talks about it. So when the level of instant translation amongst all languages, amongst all people, gets to that level where you don't even talk about it anymore, we are back at the Tower of Babel again, where all world languages are one world language and all people speak the same tongue, literally. So how many more years after that will the descent start and people use that technology, unify against the rulers? And how long will that be before they remove that technology to allow us to communicate amongst all languages? And will there be another book or a new prophet or a new religion created out of this? And the stories told thousands of years from now about this Tower of Babel that would have been the Twin Towers or something like this in retrospect. I see it so clearly. We are repeating time, and it is the same technological vibration, the same entity that is back again, trying to enslave humanity, but it understands humanity's smart and sentient and free thinking itself. So I don't know, this duality continues.
Well, it is like the Tower of Babel in a couple of ways. We have so much interconnected digital software and algorithms now. So the entire world now speaks code, right? So it doesn't matter what language you speak specifically. And think about that, exactly what you said. It's a double-edged sword. So now you have the wonders of saying anything and having it completely translated and just and transcripted for anybody anywhere in the world in whatever language they speak. But also, the spy apparatus can understand anything, anywhere, in any language, anywhere on the planet. So, not a single language, just about, is able to hide from being, transcribed by the algorithm itself. And we've talked about it before. There's machines that can literally pluck the words right out of your mind. I don't know how that would work if they would have to have a different program for each language, but think about that. We do have all the languages, and then there's English. English is now like one of the biggest languages that there are as far as words because we've incorporated slang, borrowed words, technical words, engineering words. All of these different words go into English. We just took them all. So English is riding at about 900,000 or a million words, while like stuff like French only has about 93,000 and Spanish has a similar number, I think, of 110,000. So think about that. Now, when you go in and you combine all of the words, the algorithm itself has a giant language. So like that, it's exactly like the Tower of Babel. And you could even go deeper with other people's, translations like Zachariah Sitchin, that what they were trying to build actually was a shim, which he thinks was like a rocket to take people up to low Earth orbit to get on something else and interact with space in that way. So, yeah, who knows? But think about that in terms of now we have SpaceX and all of these other, we have the liquid fuel rocket down as far as probably it's ever going to get. And then you have to ask yourself, how long are we going to continue to use basically 40s technology and tell the public that we're just stuck at a plateau? Now, meanwhile, everything else, digitally, artificial intelligence, learning machines, all of that is expanding and upgrading exponentially, but our form of travel and living standards are not going to change. And that's the new basis of the next era. They know that if they want to control everything, certain parts of civilization must remain in the old way, which is the feudalist system, but with the technological twist. And what better way to do that than kill off everybody, propagandize what's left, and grow a new population that slowly replaces the other one that is designed to do a specific function.
Sounds like the orphan trains. But yeah, the basic electrical production hasn't changed either since the 40s. I wanted to dovetail that one with you as well. The ability for us to generate electricity has not moved in over 80 years. Yeah, sure, we got some nuclear in the 1950s, but that's the apex of it. Wind was around forever. Electric cars has been around since the 1880s. And you just look at the rudimentary ways that we burn things to spin a spindle. That has never been improved on, because those Tesla patents and this sort of thing, electric gravitics, they just didn't want that to come out because that's free power. That is loss of control of the civilization because you have free power. You don't need to spend most of your waking hours learning how to make little widgets to get paid in widgets to go buy more widgets. Now you look at that and the only thing I could think of, Ransom, how about the Voinovich manuscript? I mean, if you could crack the code of the Voinovich manuscript and keep it between a few of your close friends, you'd be able to write in that code, and the computer hasn't cracked that yet. It was much like the Navajo talkers, the Navajo speakers in World War II. The code breakers could never get through because they didn't know they were speaking Navajo. Same thing like the Voinovich manuscript. I wonder if we really have to go back in time and go into some of these obscure documents and start to have to use some of this linguistically that is untranslatable, or even go back to Egyptian hieroglyphs where we start to interact in hieroglyphs that have its own meaning outside of any known meaning. But again, how long would it take for a supercomputer to crack your code on a new written form of just basic pictographs? We could put together a set of 30,000 pictographs and then, have the translation code somewhere in a book offline. You probably have to handwrite it with the monks there, so it's not online anywhere in a Word document that could be found by the supercomputer. But eventually, the code would be cracked. So is there anywhere that we can hide these days? No, not really. We can still put a seed in the ground, though. And you can still get our show notes for tonight's episode if you go to oilseedcrops.org. Right up there at MIAC show notes. Put your email in. We'll send you the talking points that we did tonight because we ran through a lot of different data points across a wide range of disciplines. We'll send that off to you on the weekly. That's just the bullet points so you can start conversations. You can remember what we talked about. You can do your own deep dive. You can share with friends and family and get these conversations started amongst your own peer group or your neighborhood or your community. Again, that is oilseedcrops.org, OIL, like one barrel of oil, seed, like a seed you plant in the ground, and crops, plural, like we harvest crops every year, oilseedcrops.org. Head right over there to the Get show notes, and we'll send those off to you. Anyway, appreciate you listening tonight. China has lost most of its food supply. Well, at least they've lost, I will say, get on the record here, that they're even on the record. Most of their early season rice crop is gone, which is 15% of their total rice crop for the year. Finished in the floods. They're out on the market scouring. Watch for your food prices up. David DuByne, Ransom Godwin signing off. We'll see you next week.